You don't have to go to prison to feel trapped. You don't have to go into a prison to rescue someone and help someone who's broken and damaged. But of course it helps. It makes a difference. Hi, I'm Trish Jenkins. I am proud to be a Soroptimist International. I travel, I speak, I have a speaking business, building resilience and leadership and adapting to change. And one of the reasons I can do that is because I've been that prisoner, and I'm not talking about a metaphor. In 2009, I went to prison for 8 months for trusting someone that turned out to be a crook and in breach of the Corporations Act. And it was a really difficult experience, very damaging, very dark, very despairing. But while I was there in that dark place, somebody came into that prison with a simple program that reminded me of my value as a woman, as a human being. And that person, 13 years later, is sitting here with me today, and that is Toni Baker, who is also a Soroptimist International.
Hi Trish. Yes, I've been a member of Soroptimist International since 1989, I think, 1988. My program had been working through the prisons, and when I met you, it was just a life-changing moment for you and for me.
It sure was. Let's talk about that. This is Toni Baker. Toni Baker is my guest. She is a Soroptimist from Soroptimist International Brisbane Club. And Soroptimist is, well, I might let Toni tell you about what Soroptimism is.
Soroptimism is an organisation that I've loved for many years, since the 1980s. I joined this wonderful organisation to be able to make a difference with the way women and girls are treated globally. When I joined, I wasn't quite sure where I would fit into this organisation, actually. I was surrounded by so many wonderful women, and I had not much of an idea how I could contribute. But the catalyst was one night we had a dinner at Boggo Jail in Brisbane, in the residential area, and the women prisoners cooked the meal for us. And we went in, and I thank Margaret Milne, a fellow Soroptimist, always. She was a policy advisor to the then Minister of Prisons, and she allowed us, through her avenues, we went in, and we met beautiful women that night in the garden in the residential area at Boggo Road, to whom I owe a change in my life. I met one woman that night who I will never forget, and who became a friend for many, many years, and started me on the road of what I eventually did, not only at Boggo Road in the residential area, but also in Numinbah, and also Helena Jones, and most importantly for me, the most time I spent was in Brisbane Women's Correctional Centre at Wacol. And the program I devised was called Beauty Within, and it grew with me over the years.
Yeah, it sure did.
Yeah.
It sure did. And during that time, I was one of the women that she encountered.
Yes.
So Toni, you came to Helena Jones at a time when it wouldn't have been just me feeling down, because people do, it's very hard. You know, they have all sorts of programs to help rehabilitate people, but the overall experience of imprisonment is really tough. It's really tough. And I was halfway through my sentence. These two ladies, Toni Baker and Lillias, came in and said, "We are Soroptimists. We are about giving back." I had never heard of Soroptimism before. And Toni brought her Beauty Within program. What do we do with beauty? We're women prisoners in a jail. What do we want with beauty? Well, Toni rekindled our self-awareness. And for me, at a time when I felt so flat, so empty, so not even a person anymore, she reminded me that as a woman, I have dignity and value and beauty. And I just had, I needed that reminder. So Toni, tell me about what you do when you come in.
That's why I thought this program up and called it Beauty Within, because I knew that every single woman I met had beauty somewhere. So many of them didn't know they ever had it. Some had lost it. And I'm not talking about physical beauty. I'm talking about beauty within one's soul. And my program was a program of self-empowerment. It started off with Nutrimetics products, which I used solely, my beautiful Nutrimetics products. That was my profession. I was a Nutrimetics executive manager. And so I had access to these beautiful products. And I came in month after month, year after year, to your Helena Jones and out to Brisbane Women's and set up little workstations for everybody. So we did a beauty routine. But the beauty routine was only really to get to the crux of my class, and what I really wanted to empower the women with was knowing that they had beauty and knowing that they could do anything they wanted just by thinking about it and meditating about it. So we had a meditation session that went from just thinking about being calm, breathing, then right up to putting our skincare on, up to the point where everyone put a mask on. And during the mask, I asked my women to imagine themselves in a triangle of bright light. And every triangle of bright light protected them. They were in their individual triangles. Everything we said came up and up and up. The rubbish flew out. The goodness was kept in. And then I started to build up with ideas about how they could be confident again in their lives when they were released. And not only when they were released, but just sharing it with others in the prison.
Look, it wasn't just using products. It reminded me of my dignity and value, but it also affected my insides and my heart. That exercise for me was a spiritual exercise.
It is for me every time I do it.
It ministered to me. There was this heaviness that was excavated from me, and it was just really, really special. When you do something for somebody like that, who can do... We couldn't buy her Nutrimetics product. She was not allowed to try and sell us anything. This was her project from her heart, supported and encouraged by her Soroptimist Club, but she resourced it from her business, her Nutrimetics business.
That's right.
Don't ever think that what you do might not have very much effect. And you might not ever hear from those women again. But you did hear from me, didn't you?
I sure did. I heard from you. And over the years, I've just thought about you and how we met and how it changed your life. And I always feel within my heart that there are other women out there like you who walked out of prison after doing the little session with me, thinking that they may have had some change in their attitude as well. I know many of them did. I had letters from some, but the majority I had no letters from, and I didn't know anything more than their first name and never knew why they were there. I never asked. Sometimes people told me, and that was really sad and devastating for me to know why people were there. But honestly, I just hope in my heart that the people who went through this class with me are out there with a little piece of that day or night still hidden away, and they remember it. And that's what makes it so special for me. So many of the women I saw had never been touched, and part of my program was to do a facial massage after the meditation, and they were in a very calm state by then and knew that they were in a safe place within their soul and within their hearts. And I just then did the facial massage, touching only their face. Some of them...
With permission.
Yes, that's right, with permission. And some of them wouldn't, and they'd sit back, but they'd still be in the zone of being in the meditation. And others said yes, and I'd go to put the product on their face to do the meditation, and they would cringe because they'd never been touched before except in anger. And that was the most powerful thing of what I did, to be able to touch another person's face that was with love and not anger. That just really, I just loved that. Every woman I did that for, and there were hundreds of them. I did this program for about 20 years. I think I only finished it in 2019 as I got older, and then my circumstance changed, and as COVID hit, and but I know for those 20 years I did it, I touched people's lives, and I'm so grateful for that.
Well, you have. It's amazing. You have no idea the ripple effect of the people that you touch, and
That's right.
You touched my life, and when I came home, I had some time recovering from the experience, and I never forgot. And I remembered your name, and I remembered Soroptimist International, which is not an easy name to remember, but it meant something to me. So I contacted the closest club and I said, "Oh, would you pass on my thanks?" And the person on the other end of the line said, "Oh my goodness, no, please come. We've got a function coming up, and we'd love to have you along." And so I thought, somebody wants me, because I felt tainted, and I went along to an International Women's Day event.
Oh wow!
For that one, and I went along and was roped into helping out, then roped into the club that I thought
and becoming a member.
I didn't know if I was good enough. I didn't know if I was.
That's the way I felt when I started. I think we all have that doubt when we start in an organisation such as Soroptimist International. It's so special. But you were welcomed, weren't you?
I was welcomed. Toni wasn't. You weren't there.
No, that wasn't
one. That
my
was
club.
much later. There was Chris Knight. There was Audrey Martin. Who was the president at the time?
I don't know.
Linda Calder. Linda, if you're listening, you're the one who invited me. All these women encouraged me. That the things that they said about empowering women, it wasn't like, well, we can, we want to help women, but you can't be one of us. It wasn't like that.
No, it wasn't, was it?
It wasn't. It wasn't like that.
It was just so wonderful when I saw you again at one of the meetings. It was just, I can't tell you. To see you in that organisation as a member, doing good with the way your life is now, and it just made me feel, yes, it was worthwhile.
It was so worthwhile. And, women, like, I remember having a conversation with Chris Knight, who was a member then and still is, who encouraged me, because I had a book for women that I had not yet published on how to avoid getting tripped up financially, which is what had happened to me. I was defrauded in it, and I was in breach of the Corporations Act, and it was just hideous. And I didn't know whether I could put it out there. And it was the Soroptimists who said to me, "This is an important message for women. We'll encourage you, we'll support you, we will push you," very gently. And since then, I've spent the last 14 years, travelling the globe when we could travel, speaking to, I have a business in speaking, which is that confidence that I was given. But when I do, I get in touch with local Soroptimist clubs and say, "Hey, I'm going to be in the area. Would you like to catch up?" And I'd love to share the story of how it was a Soroptimist who came to me in my darkest time, in a prison. You don't have to be in prison to feel trapped. And you don't have to go into a prison to help a woman who feels trapped. You just don't know a few words of kindness. Just putting yourself out a little bit. You put yourself out a lot, and you put your money and your time and your effort into it. But you just don't know the impact that what you do for somebody can have. And I want to encourage you to do that more. Have eyes to see and ears to hear, just to notice what's out there and what you can do. You can't do everything, but what can you do? You had Nutrimetics. You said, "What can I do?"
That was
you
my
had
vehicle.
Nutrimetics.
That was my vehicle.
Yeah. You might have a different vehicle. If you're part of a Soroptimist club, I would encourage you to look at your projects. Feel free to get in touch with Soroptimist International Moreton North in regards to, for me, to get in touch with me, or Lee Elwood Brown about more projects to do with women in prison, because a life can be changed, and that has a magnifying effect. I have 3 daughters who are now doing well, and they could have gone off track. But we have that support.
I'd like to congratulate you, Trish, for doing what you've done when you were released and came out again, and the businesses that you've built up around the world and the way you speak, and you have touched so many women's lives as a result of you and I meeting that night. So I just really thank you and love you for doing what you're doing and spreading the word about how women can help other women. And that's what we do in Soroptimist International.
No.
Now, Trish, I'd like to ask you a question too. During the many years I've done this, I have seen women who have reoffended. And I have seen generations of women who have reoffended, actually. The recidivism rate is so very high. But you never wanted to reoffend. You never thought about it. And you always wanted to do better and put that time behind you that happened in your life. Did you ever think that you could find an easy way out again, or maybe go down the path that you went down before, or did you never ever think that you wanted to go back that way?
Well, that's a complex question.
Yes.
Complex answers, but I'll try. Look, I don't come from disadvantage. I don't come from poverty. I don't have a background entrenched in drug addiction and so on. And I made friends in prison who would go out and then come back again.
Yeah.
And I've got to say that there were times I was so disillusioned with the system, with the justice system, that because when I looked at comparative crimes and so on, it just I got the maximum you could get. I could have got a fine, I could have got a scolding from the judge, but I got the maximum that could be given. And I've since learned it's very much about who you get on the day. That's not to say I didn't deserve to go to prison. People can judge that for themselves. But the inequities are huge. And I was a law-abiding person all the way up to then, but afterwards I actually thought to myself, what did it get me? Well, being open and honest with the authorities got me. I could have been dishonest and avoided, I probably could have said things to avoid going to prison and done things differently. So there was a temptation to become cynical and lie on job applications, getting a job when you've got a criminal record. There was a temptation to think, well,
Hide it.
It doesn't matter. Doing the right thing doesn't really get you anywhere. That was right there in front of me. And really it was only because I had support. I was lucky enough, blessed enough, I had a good family. I had, in fact, some of the support I had was a reason I couldn't get any help. So I couldn't get employment, I couldn't get help to get employment because my husband had a job. I wasn't disadvantaged enough to get the help that could have helped. But so I had to find it myself. And clubs like Soroptimism scaffolded me and encouraged me. And when I felt down, I would make a phone call to someone in the club, a friend, and cry. Yeah. And say, when am I going to get a break? When am I finally going to stop having to pay for this? Because you feel like it's written on your forehead. You feel tainted. Yeah. And then, I belong to the only demographic that is allowed to be discriminated against in employment, in all sorts of things. You get a criminal record, that's it. It's never over. In America, they're not allowed to vote again, many of them.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So.
Oh my God.
It's real. Even though, you were privileged, you came from a, good, so you never would have. Well, maybe I would have, if I'd been given those circumstances. When you've got that, if you don't have, someone might not have family, but they might have a Soroptimist club. It might be when I speak to Rotary clubs or when I speak to, chambers of commerce. I talk to people about connection, supporting one another. It's so important. Every program helps. There are things that go on that undermine those programs, but things like chaplaincy, what you do, education is huge. I'm very well educated, but it didn't help me get a job afterwards because I had this big handicap. 10 years later, finally, I can get a criminal history check and it won't come up anymore. But of course, it's all over Google now because I tell people.
Yes. Oh, God.
And the thing is too, it's so true. It's not what happens to you, it's how you see it that determines how well you go on. And so helping people to reframe, to see whatever it was that was the thing that damaged them, if you can find a way to see differently, yes, it was hard. Yes, your pain is absolutely valid. But to ask, what can we do with this? What can we do to make it pay? Not necessarily money, but what happened to you owes you. You feel owed. You feel angry and resentful. You feel like somebody owes me something. I'll tell you what it owes you. You look at that opportunity and you say, how can I make that opportunity serve so it actually does some good?
And that's what you've done. That's what you've done.
Yeah. I turn it into a story that encourages people
Yes.
who are in their own kind of prison to get free.
Yes.
Then that actually makes what I went through worth it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's only by that support. Couldn't have done it on my own.
You're a wonderful example.
Yeah.
And I hope our message reaches so many people who have been in the same position as you, and others like me who may be able to help in ways they don't even know yet.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah, look, in addition to that, I still have a husband, and I had supportive parents who were looking after my children. Other women have their children in foster care with all sorts of things happening there. So that's why it's really important to have support and programs to surround women particularly, because they're so vulnerable, especially vulnerable to relationships because they're broken in heart and so on. They can feel like that's all they're worth, so they end up going with men who are not good for them. If they've got that support, all sorts of programs, it's things that equip them, yes, in their education, yes, in their work skills, but also emotionally, to take the time to be a friend. Those are the things that make a big difference. So there are women who they do reoffend because they don't have it. They don't have family to go back to, violent men to go back to. But if they have something.
These are the women we want to reach.
Yeah.
We want to reach those women and say, there is help out there, and if you believe in yourself, one step at a time, you can make it.
You can, and that's where, whether it's through government programs, through the United Nations, through these initiatives that help women, even women in poverty, through education to get early intervention. When I went through those doors of prison, everyone gets assessed. We get a medical, and I'm getting my medical, and she's asking me, this nurse is asking me, have you ever been raped? Have you been sexually assaulted? Have you been trafficked? Have you been molested? Do you have a sexually transmitted disease? Now, I'm just sitting there, no. I'm waiting for her to ask about my allergies. Didn't happen. And I said, well, hold on. What percentage of women who come through here have been sexually hurt?
Probably most of them.
She said, around about 93%.
Absolutely.
Give or take.
Yes.
Well, I know that not everybody who's been sexually assaulted ends up in prison, but almost everyone who ends up in prison has had that happen in some form. So if we can intervene early, get them help early, counselling early, loved and healed early, and the young men, boys, educating boys, then prevention is way more cost effective.
So what you're saying is education is the key. And
Education
unfortunately,
and love.
Yes, unfortunately I've seen the education diminish in women's prisons since I started. The access to education has actually diminished in women's prisons. And I would say that's what we need. We need education with a capital E, and we need love. So many of the women I've met in prison just did not need to be there if they had been educated in a different way in society before they ever got there. It's tragic, isn't it?
Yeah, if we can invest in mental health, mental and emotional health and healing for our young ones, then we can intercept. Because when children get hurt and damaged, unless they get healed, there's a part of them that stays broken. They do. Yeah. And then they're attracted to friends and gain acceptance from wherever they can, and then it becomes this cycle.
That's right.
So it's really important to support programs that invest early, because they do work, and to work together with groups, with churches, with just whatever it takes. There are studies that show that even financially, countries do better statistically. It's financially better to invest early than the cost in prevention, than the cost of...
That's it. Think of what we spend in this country on prisons.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Trish.
It's been so lovely to see you again.
It's been terrific. It sure has. I love you.
Oh, love you too. You're special.
Thank you.
In my life. And I don't know who's watching, but I want to inspire you and encourage you. If it's sparked something in you to do something, if you're in a position in politics, in education, in somewhere where you can help make something happen to make that difference,
please do.
Please do.
Oh, what power you have.